Zenthara stared at her screen for the third time that day. Something was wrong with the galactic map, but she could not figure out what. The young Talvari had been working as a cartographer for 2 years now, updating star charts and trade routes for the Galactic Navigation Database. She knew every corner of mapped space by heart, but today she noticed something strange. Every single map she worked on just stopped at a certain point. Not because space ended there, but because someone had drawn an invisible line and said no more mapping past this point. She zoomed in on the boundary. The coordinates showed empty space, but the navigation system labeled it as Restricted Zone 7 Alpha. Beyond that line, her screen showed nothing. Not black space with stars, not unexplored regions marked with question marks. Just blank gray emptiness like someone had erased that part of the galaxy. Zenthara counted the star systems that should be in that blank area. Her computer estimated nearly 15,000 systems. That was huge. Some entire species controlled fewer systems than what was hidden behind that gray wall on her screen. She called up older maps from the archives. The same gray area appeared on charts from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, even 200 years back. But when she tried to access maps older than 300 years, she got an error message. Archives restricted. Contact supervisor for access. This was getting interesting. Zenthara had always been curious, sometimes too curious for her own good. Her parents used to joke that she would ask why until the stars went dark. Today those old habits kicked in hard. She walked to her supervisor's office. Elder Vorthak was old even by Talvari standards, with gray skin that had turned almost white with age. He had been working in navigation for over 60 years. Elder Vorthak, she said, trying to sound casual. I found something odd in the mapping system. There's this big empty area marked as Restricted Zone 7 Alpha. Do you know what that's about? The old Talvari looked up from his work, and Zenthara saw something she had never seen before in his eyes. Fear. Just for a second, but it was definitely there. Youngling, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Some areas of space are restricted for good reasons. Pirates, dangerous radiation, things like that. You should focus on charting the sectors we can actually use. But 15,000 systems? Zenthara pressed. That's not a small pirate hideout. That's bigger than most species' entire territories. Elder Vorthak stood up quickly, almost knocking over his chair. Young Zenthara, some boundaries exist for very good reasons. Trust your elders on this. There are things in this galaxy that are best left alone. He was hiding something. Zenthara could tell by the way his neck frills fluttered nervously. But she also knew better than to push her supervisor too hard. Of course, Elder, I understand. But she did not understand, and she was not going to let this go. That evening, Zenthara went to the old archives building. Most young workers avoided the place because it was dusty and full of physical data storage that smelled like old electronics. But Zenthara had always liked it there. The head archivist, Kivara, was kind to her and sometimes shared interesting stories about the old days. Kivara was ancient, even older than Elder Vorthak. Her species, the Mortal, lived much longer than most others, and she claimed to remember events from over 400 years ago. Kivara, Zenthara said, settling into a chair beside the old archivist's desk. Have you ever heard of Restricted Zone 7 Alpha? The effect was immediate. Kivara's 6 eyes went wide, and her breathing tubes made a sharp whistling sound that meant shock or fear in her species. Child, she whispered, looking around to make sure no one else was in the archive room. Where did you hear that name? I found it on the navigation maps. There's this huge area of space that's just blank. 15,000 systems all marked as restricted, but no one will tell me why. Kivara was quiet for a long time. She stood up slowly and walked to a locked cabinet that Zenthara had never seen opened. The old archivist pulled out a data pad that looked ancient, its screen flickering with age. Sit down, child. What I'm going to tell you is not in any official records. Most people your age have never heard this story, and there are good reasons for that. Zenthara felt her hearts beating faster. Both of them, the way they always did when she was excited or nervous. Those systems are not restricted, child. They are quarantined. And we are not keeping something in. Kivara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. We are keeping ourselves out. What do you mean? Long ago, before you were hatched, before your parents were hatched, there was a species that lived in those systems. They were called humans, and they were different. Kivara touched the old datapad and its screen showed a star map. But this map was different from anything Zenthara had ever seen. The area that was blank on modern maps was filled with trade routes, colony markers, and diplomatic symbols. This is what space looked like 850 years ago, Kivara said. Those systems were not empty then. They were full of life, trade, and contact with the rest of the galaxy. What happened to them? Did they all die? No, child. They did not die. Kivara's voice was very quiet now. They won. Won what? Everything. Xanthara stared at the old map. She could see names written in strange letters next to some of the systems. Human names, she guessed. The trade routes connected human space to dozens of other species' territories. It looked like humans had been part of normal galactic society. I do not understand, she said. If they won everything, where are they now? Why are their systems restricted? Kivara closed the datapad carefully like she was handling something dangerous. Because, dear child, they are still there. And after what happened the last time we contacted them, the entire galaxy agreed on one thing. Never go to human space again. Never talk about them. Never even admit they exist. But why? What did they do? The old archivist looked directly at Xanthara with all 6 of her eyes. They reminded us that there are worse things than being conquered, child. Sometimes the scariest thing is not being destroyed. Sometimes the scariest thing is being ignored. Xanthara left the archives that night with more questions than answers. But now she knew one thing for certain. The blank space on her maps was not empty. Something was there, something that scared the entire galaxy so much that they pretended it did not exist. And she was going to find out what it was. Xanthara could not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that old star map with all those connected systems. Kivara's words kept repeating in her head. They won everything. The next day, she went back to the archives early, before her regular work shift started. Kivara was already there, as if she had been expecting her. You came back, the old archivist said. I thought you might. I need to know more, Xanthara said. Please, what really happened to the humans? Kivara sighed, a long whistling sound through her breathing tubes. Very well. But first, you must promise me something. You cannot tell anyone else about this. Not your supervisor, not your friends, not your family. Some knowledge is dangerous. I promise. Kivara led her to a deeper part of the archives, past rooms full of old data storage that Xanthara had never seen before. At the very back, behind a door that needed 3 different keys, was a small room with walls covered in locked cabinets. These are the Forbidden Archives, Kivara explained. Records that the Galactic Council ordered destroyed after the Terran incident. I saved copies because I believe history should not be forgotten. Even terrible history. She opened one of the cabinets and pulled out several data pads and storage crystals. 850 years ago, the galaxy was very different. It was controlled by something called the hegemony. 12 advanced species that ruled over everyone else. They decided who could trade with who could explore new systems, who could develop new technology. Xanthara nodded. She had learned about the hegemony in school, but only basic facts. It was described as an ancient government that had kept peace in the galaxy. The humans were what the hegemony called a junior species, Kivara continued. They were allowed to exist, but only under strict rules. They could only live in certain systems, could only trade certain goods, could only build certain types of ships. She activated one of the data pads, and Xanthara saw what looked like a species evaluation report. Look at this, Kivara said. This is how the hegemony classified humans 900 years ago. Xanthara read the report. It described humans as non-threatening agricultural specialists, with limited technological development. Their population was listed as moderate and stable. Their military was rated as minimal defensive capability only. At the bottom, someone had written, recommended status, restricted autonomy under hegemony oversight. No expansion beyond current systems authorized. They thought humans were harmless farmers? Xanthara asked, completely harmless. The hegemony experts were very sure about this. Humans had been under their control for over 200 years without any problems. Kivara pulled up another document. But then humans started asking for things. Better trading rights, permission to explore new systems, representation in hegemony councils. That seems reasonable. The hegemony did not think so. They said humans should be grateful for what they already had, so humans asked again very politely, and again. For 50 years they kept asking nicely. What happened then? Kivara's eyes darkened. They stopped asking. She showed Xanthara a military report dated 847 years ago. It was from Commander Zheltok of the Hegemony Defense Fleet. "Read this," she said. Xanthara read the report out loud. "Human systems have ceased all communication with Hegemony oversight. Our monitoring stations report massive industrial activity, but human representatives refuse to respond to demands for inspection. They claim to be busy with internal development." She looked up at Kivara. "That doesn't sound too scary." "Keep reading." Recommendation: deploy Third Fleet to human space to remind them of their obligations under hegemony law. Estimated mission duration: 2 weeks. Kivara pulled up more files. The Third Fleet was the hegemony's pride. 15,000 ships with the best warriors from all 12 ruling species. They had never failed to bring a rebellious system back in line. What happened to them? They never came back. Xanthara felt a chill run down her spine. Never? Not a single ship. The fleet entered human space and vanished completely. No distress signals, no battle reports, no survivors. Kivara showed her another document. The hegemony thought it must have been some kind of accident. Maybe the humans had discovered a new weapon, or perhaps pirates had attacked the fleet, so they sent the Fifth Fleet to investigate. And it vanished too. Then the Seventh Fleet, then emergency response squadrons. In 18 months, the hegemony lost over half of their total military trying to find out what happened in human space. Xanthara stared at the casualty reports on the screen. The numbers were enormous. Hundreds of thousands of ships, millions of crew members, all gone. How is that possible? You said humans were just farmers with basic technology. That is what everyone thought, Kivara said. But the few survivors who escaped told a different story. She pulled up an audio file. This is from Captain Ryle Thane of the battleship Cosmic Dominion. It was one of the last transmissions received from human space. The recording was full of static, but Xanthara could hear the panic in the captain's voice. Unknown command. This is Cosmic Dominion. We are under attack by human forces, but these are not the ships in our databases. Repeat, these are not the same ships we have records of. They are using technology we do not recognize. Our weapons are not effective against their hulls. They are faster than our fastest interceptors and their weapons. The transmission cut to static. That was from a heavy battleship, Kivara explained. One of the most powerful ships the hegemony ever built, and the humans destroyed it easily. Xanthara was quiet for a moment, trying to process this information. So humans went from being harmless farmers to destroying entire fleets in just a few years? It gets worse, Kivara said. The hegemony tried to negotiate. They sent Ambassador Dalaric with offers of peace, full membership in the hegemony, expanded territory, technology sharing, anything humans wanted. What did humans say? Kivara played another recording. This one was clearer, and Xanthara could hear 2 voices. The first was obviously the ambassador, speaking in the formal style that diplomats used. On behalf of the Hegemony Council, I offer humanity full membership status, expanded territorial rights, and immediate access to advanced technologies. We wish only to end this unfortunate conflict and return to peaceful relations. The second voice was different. It was calm, almost gentle, but something about it made Xanthara's skin crawl. Ambassador, I think you misunderstand our position. We are not fighting for better terms within your system. We are fighting to end your system entirely. Surely we can reach some agreement. You had 850 of your years to treat us as equals. Now we will treat you as we see fit. The recording ended with sounds of panic and the ambassador screaming something about being surrounded. Who was the human speaking? Xanthara asked. According to the records, her name was Park Minha. She was described as a civilian administrator in the human government. She sounded so calm. That was what scared the hegemony most of all. Humans were not angry or emotional about the war. They were treating it like a job that needed to be done. Kivara closed the data pads and looked at Xanthara seriously. This is why human space is quarantined, child. Not because they are gone, but because they are still there. And in 800 years since that war, no one has been brave enough to find out what they have been doing all that time. Xanthara spent the next 3 days thinking about everything Kivara had told her. During her regular work, she found herself staring at the gray area on her maps, wondering what was really happening in those 15,000 systems. On the 4th day, she went back to the Forbidden Archives. I need to know more, she told Kivara. How did humans change so fast? How did farmers become strong enough to destroy the hegemony's fleets? The old archivist looked tired, like she had not been sleeping well either. Very well. But this part of the story is much worse than what I have already told. She led Xanthara to the locked room again and pulled out a new set of files. These are battlefield reports from the few ships that managed to escape human space. They paint a picture of something that should have been impossible. The first file was from pilot Morjack, who had been flying a scout ship near the human homeworld. "Read this report," Kivara said. Xanthara read. "Mission log, day 15. Approached human homeworld for reconnaissance. What we found defies explanation. The planet Earth no longer appears to be a natural world. The entire surface has been covered with artificial structures. Deep scans show construction extending through the planet's crust and into the core itself." She looked up at Kivara. "They rebuilt their whole planet?" "Keep reading." "The planet appears to have been converted into some kind of massive factory or fortress. We detected thousands of ships launching from the surface every hour. Ship designs are completely unknown. They do not match any technology in hegemony databases. Impossible energy readings from the planet's core suggest they have learned to harness their star's power directly. Recommend immediate withdrawal. This is not a civilization we can fight with conventional methods." Xanthara felt sick. "They turned their homeworld into a weapon?" "That was just the beginning," Kivara said. "Look at this report from Research Director Koji Wan. This file was different. It was not a military report but seemed to be some kind of scientific analysis. Captured hegemony technology analysis complete. Fusion drives. Improved efficiency by 40%. Plasma weapons power output increased threefold. Gravity manipulators. Achieved stable field generation at half the energy cost. Hull materials. New alloy composition provides superior protection while reducing mass. Recommendation: implement improvements across all ship classes immediately. Neural interface systems, adapted for human physiology. Pilot reaction times improved by orders of magnitude. Recommend integration with all combat vessels." Xanthara stared at the report. "They were stealing hegemony technology?" "Not stealing," Kivara corrected. "Improving. Every time humans captured a hegemony ship, they studied it and made it better. But they were not just copying technology. They were learning the principles behind it and then creating completely new designs." She showed Xanthara another file. This one from Admiral Lee Hunwoo. Strategic analysis. Hegemony forces rely on predictable battle formations and established tactics. Their commanders expect enemies to follow similar patterns. Recommendation: develop asymmetric warfare methods that exploit their tactical assumptions. Phase 1. Hit-and-run attacks to force them to spread their forces thin. Phase 2. Target supply lines and communication networks. Phase 3. Force them to fight in locations we choose, not locations they prefer. Current status. Hegemony military doctrine appears unchanged despite heavy losses. They continue to use the same strategies that worked against previous enemies. This predictability is our greatest advantage. Humans were not just better at fighting, Kivara explained. They were better at thinking about fighting. They studied their enemies like scientists study test subjects. She pulled up more files, these ones showing the broader scope of human operations. Governor Nam Yunji established colonies that could build ships faster than the hegemony could destroy them. Engineer Choi Jae-hyun designed factories that could be buried so deep underground that orbital bombardment could not touch them. But the most frightening reports came from species that were not even fighting humans directly. Xanthara looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Humans were not just fighting a military war. They were fighting an economic war, a political war, and a social war all at the same time." Kivara showed her diplomatic reports from various hegemony member species. The Veltari Confederation received an offer from humans. "Help us, and we will give you the technology to become independent of hegemony control." The Zorthak Commonwealth got a similar offer. So did the Plixnar Alliance. Humans were turning hegemony allies against each other. More than that, they were offering freedom to species that had been under hegemony control for thousands of years, and they were keeping their promises. The next file was from Supreme Chancellor Vex Maria, the leader of the entire hegemony. Internal Situation Report. 17 member species have declared independence in the past 6 months. Human agents have infiltrated our economic networks and disrupted trade across 40 systems. 3 of our core worlds are reporting sabotage of industrial facilities. Military situation. Human forces have demonstrated tactical superiority in every engagement. They appear to have unlimited resources and ship production capabilities. Our intelligence suggests they have colonies in systems we never knew existed. Recommendation: consider negotiated settlement. Current military approach is unsustainable. The hegemony tried to make peace? Xanthara asked. They tried. But by then it was too late. Kivara pulled up the final file, marked with symbols that meant highest security classification. This is from the day the hegemony fell, she said quietly. The report was short, but terrifying. Emergency transmission from Defense Command. Humans have demonstrated the ability to weaponize stellar collapse. 3 core worlds destroyed by induced supernova. Estimated casualties, 12 billion beings. This is not a military conflict anymore. This is extinction-level warfare. Humans have made the entire galaxy their battlefield, and we do not know how to fight an enemy that can destroy star systems. Evacuation order. All hegemony personnel abandon core territories immediately. Scatter protocols in effect. Establish new governments in outer rim systems. Final note. We created this situation by treating humans as inferior. They have proven that there are no inferior species, only species we have not bothered to understand. Xanthara sat in silence for a long time. The scale of what humans had accomplished was beyond her ability to fully grasp. They destroyed entire star systems? She finally asked. 3 of them, the hegemony's most important worlds, turned into supernovas in a single day. Billions of people dead in hours. But why? They had already won the war. Kivara's 6 eyes focused on her. That is the question that kept everyone awake for decades after the war ended. Why did humans need to prove they could destroy stars? They had already broken the hegemony's military, turned their allies against them, and captured dozens of systems. The only answer anyone could think of was simple. Humans wanted to make sure that nobody would ever be stupid enough to try controlling them again. They wanted the entire galaxy to understand that there were some species you do not mess with. And it worked perfectly. After the hegemony fell, the surviving species created new governments in the outer rim systems. And the very first law they all agreed on was simple: never contact humans again. Xanthara looked at the files spread across the table. Hundreds of reports, thousands of casualty lists, the complete destruction of the most powerful government the galaxy had ever known. Kivara, she said slowly, if humans could do all this 800 years ago, what do you think they can do now? Kivara did not answer Xanthara's question right away. Instead, she walked to another cabinet and pulled out a data pad that looked newer than the others. That is exactly what some people have been wondering, she said, and a few of them have been foolish enough to try finding out. She handed the data pad to Xanthara. These are incidents from the past 200 years, times when someone got too close to human space. The first file was dated 150 years ago. It was from Captain Yil Honda of a merchant ship called the Trade Wind. We were chasing pirates who had stolen our cargo, Xanthara read. The chase led us to the edge of the restricted zone. Our navigation system warned us about the boundary, but the pirates crossed it anyway. We followed them for just a few light minutes past the line. What we found was impossible. The pirates' ships were just floating in space, completely intact but empty. No crew, no bodies, nothing. It was like everyone aboard had just vanished. Then we detected something approaching us, a ship unlike anything in any database. It moved without visible engines, made no energy signature our sensors could read. When it got close, it sent a single message: turn around. We turned around immediately. As we were leaving, we saw the pirate ships being taken away by more unknown vessels. We never found out what happened to the crews. Xanthara looked up. The humans just took the pirates? Keep reading. There are more incidents. The next report was from 50 years ago. A scientific expedition had been studying strange energy readings near the boundary. Research vessel Cosmic Observer mission log. We detected artificial gravity waves coming from inside the restricted zone. The patterns were unlike anything known to galactic science. Our xenology team theorized that someone was conducting massive engineering projects. Dr. Peltheran requested permission to send probe drones across the boundary for closer study. Permission denied by Galactic Council. Dr. Peltheran launched probes anyway during night shift. Probes returned 6 hours later, but their memory banks had been completely wiped. Not damaged or destroyed, but carefully erased. Someone or something had examined our technology and sent it back with a clear message. We know you are watching us. Most disturbing. Probe hulls showed microscopic modifications that our engineers cannot explain. It appears someone reverse-engineered our technology and improved it in the time it took to examine the probes. Recommend immediate termination of research project. Whatever is in that zone has capabilities far beyond our understanding. Synthara felt a chill. They studied the probes and sent them back better than before? That is not the strangest part, Kivara said. Look at this report from 20 years ago. This file was marked as a military intelligence report. Sector Patrol Vessel Dawn Hunter encountered unknown ships at coordinates near human space boundary. Ships were sleek, fast, and completely silent. When approached, they withdrew immediately without aggressive action. Analysis of sensor data reveals shocking conclusions. Ships were approximately 2 kilometers long, but showed no visible crew sections, weapon ports, or engine exhausts. Hull materials unknown. Propulsion method unknown. Most concerning, ships demonstrated ability to accelerate at rates that should liquefy any organic crew. Either these vessels have gravity control technology beyond our comprehension, or they are unmanned. Recommendation: do not approach unknown vessels. If humans are building ships like this, our current military technology would be completely useless against them. They are still building ships, Synthara said. After all this time, they are still preparing for war. Or something else, Kivara said grimly. She showed Synthara the newest file, dated just 5 years ago. Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7 detected massive energy signatures from multiple systems inside human space. Energy output consistent with major stellar engineering projects. Estimated scale: planetary construction or disassembly. Additional readings suggest industrial activity on a level that requires the resources of entire star systems. Unknown what is being built, but the energy requirements would dwarf our entire galactic civilization's power consumption. Recommendation: increase monitoring but maintain safe distance. Whatever humans are building in their space, it is on a scale we have never seen before. Synthara stared at the report. They are building something that needs the power of whole stars? Multiple stars, Kivara corrected. The energy readings come from dozens of systems, but what could be that big? No one knows. And that is the problem. Kivara walked to her desk and sat down heavily. Synthara, I have been thinking about this for decades. Humans went to war with the hegemony because they wanted to be treated as equals. They won that war completely. So why are they still building? Synthara thought about this. Maybe they are afraid someone else will try to control them? Possible. But humans destroyed the hegemony 800 years ago. Since then, no galactic government has been strong enough to threaten anyone. We can barely keep pirates under control, let alone fight a war against a species that can blow up stars. Then what are they preparing for? Kivara's 6 eyes focused on her with an expression that made Synthara very uncomfortable. Child, what if they are not preparing to defend themselves? What if they are preparing to expand? The thought hit Synthara like cold water. She had been thinking of humans as a species that just wanted to be left alone, but that was not what the evidence suggested. You think they might invade the rest of the galaxy? I think, Kivara said carefully, that humans have spent 800 years becoming something we cannot imagine. They have technology we cannot understand, resources we cannot match, and industrial capacity that makes our entire civilization look like a small colony. And worst of all, we have no idea what they want to do with all that power. Synthara was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything she had learned. Humans had gone from being controlled farmers to galactic superpower in just a few decades. What could they have become in 8 centuries? Kivara, she said finally, do you think they remember us? Do they remember the other species that were part of the hegemony? The old archivist made that whistling sound that meant deep worry. That is the question that keeps me awake at night, child. Do they remember us as fellow victims of hegemony control? Or do they remember us as part of the system that oppressed them? She pulled up one more file, this one from her personal notes rather than official records. I have been tracking human boundary activity for 30 years. The patterns suggest they know exactly where we are and what we are doing. Their ships patrol the boundary regularly. They monitor our communications. They watch our trade routes. They are not hiding from us, Synthara. They are studying us. Studying us for what? I do not know. But I know this. When humans studied the hegemony, it was because they were planning to destroy it. When they studied hegemony technology, it was because they were planning to improve it. When they studied hegemony tactics, it was because they were planning to defeat them. So if they are studying us now, then they are planning something big enough to require 800 years of preparation. Xanthara felt like the floor was falling away beneath her feet. All her life, she had thought the blank area on her maps was just empty space that no one cared about. Now she understood that it was full of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known, and they had been watching everyone else this entire time. "What do we do?" she asked. "We? Nothing. This is far beyond anything young cartographers can handle, but someone needs to know what I have told you. Someone in the government needs to understand that the quarantine around human space is not keeping them contained. It is keeping us safe from them, for as long as they choose to let it." Xanthara made a decision that changed everything. She could not keep this knowledge to herself anymore. The next morning, she went to the Galactic Council building and requested an emergency meeting with the highest officials she could reach. It took 3 days of arguing with secretaries and security guards, but finally someone agreed to listen to her. Prime Minister Veltharion was a stern Nexthalan who had been in government for 40 years. He agreed to meet with her only because Elder Vorthak had vouched for her work. "Young cartographer," the Prime Minister said when she entered his office, "I am told you have concerns about navigation protocols. Make it quick." "Sir, it is about the restricted zone, the area marked as 7 Alpha on all our maps." The change in the Prime Minister's expression was immediate. His neck frills, which had been relaxed, suddenly stood straight up in alarm. "How do you know that designation?" "I have been researching the blank areas in our navigation database. Sir, I know about the humans." Prime Minister Veltharion stood up so fast that his chair fell over. He pressed a button on his desk and the office door locked with a loud click. "Sit down," he said, his voice very quiet. "Tell me exactly what you know." For the next hour, Xanthara explained everything Kivara had told her. The Prime Minister listened without interrupting, but she could see fear growing in his eyes with every detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You should not know any of this," he said finally. "This information has been classified for 800 years. But sir, people have a right to know. If humans are still there, if they are still building something—" "Young Xanthara," the Prime Minister interrupted, "do you think you are the first person to discover this information? Do you think the government does not know about human activity in that zone?" He walked to his own secured cabinet and pulled out files that looked much newer than the ones in Kivara's archives. "We know everything you have learned, and much more. The question is not whether humans are still active. The question is what we should do about it." He activated a large screen on his office wall. It showed a real-time display of the galaxy, with all inhabited systems marked in different colors. "Intelligence Chief Korana briefed me last week on the latest monitoring data. Look at this." The screen zoomed in on the boundary between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Xanthara could see small dots moving along the border. "Those are human ships," the Prime Minister said. "They patrol the boundary every day. Our sensors can barely detect them, but they are there. They are watching us constantly. And this is what really worries our intelligence analysts." He changed the display to show energy readings from human space. The levels were enormous, far higher than anything Xanthara had seen in the historical files. "This data is from the past month. Whatever humans are building in there, they are working faster now than they have in centuries." Another official entered the office, a tall Korvani with dark skin and worried eyes. The Prime Minister introduced her as Intelligence Chief Korana. "Show her the rest," the Prime Minister said. Korana activated another screen. "We have detected human ships in systems that should be impossible for them to reach. Systems that are surrounded by our space with no clear route from human territory. How is that possible? We do not know. Either humans have faster-than-light travel technology that we cannot detect, or they have colonies in places we never suspected." She showed Xanthara star maps, with red markers scattered throughout the galaxy. "These are locations where our deep space sensors have detected energy signatures that match human technology. If these readings are accurate, humans have been quietly establishing presence in hundreds of systems over the past few centuries. But that would mean that they are not contained in their original territory." Korana finished. "They may already be everywhere." The Prime Minister sat back down heavily. "This is why we have not told the general population about humans. Can you imagine the panic if people knew that humanity might have colonies in the next system over? Zenthara felt sick. Are we in danger? We do not know, the Prime Minister admitted. That is the worst part. Humans have made no hostile moves against us. They have not attacked our ships, invaded our territory, or made any demands. They just watch. But sir, she said, young people are starting to ask questions about the restricted zones. Some of the shipping companies want to explore those areas. What happens when someone accidentally crosses into human space? The Prime Minister and Intelligence Chief Korana exchanged a look that made Zenthara very nervous. That has already happened, Korana said quietly. She pulled up another file. 3 months ago, a group of pirates tried to raid shipping near the boundary. They fled into human space when our patrol ships chased them. What happened? The pirates never came back. But 2 days later, we received a package at our nearest military base. It contained the pirates' personal effects and a simple message. Your criminals have been processed. Please maintain better border security. Processed? We assume that means the pirates are dead, but humans did not say that directly. They just returned the pirates' belongings and asked us to do a better job of keeping criminals away from their territory. The Prime Minister leaned forward. Zenthara, humans could have ignored the pirates or simply destroyed them and said nothing. Instead, they sent us a polite message asking us to be more careful. What does that tell you? She thought about it. That they do not want conflict, but they also will not allow anyone to enter their space uninvited. Exactly. But here is what really scares us. How did they catch the pirates so quickly? How did they know the criminals were from our territory? And how did they deliver that package to our military base without our sensors detecting any ships? Zenthara had no answers for those questions. There is more, Korana said. Last month we detected massive energy spikes from 17 different systems in human space, all at the same time. The energy output lasted for exactly 6 hours, then stopped. What could cause that? We have no idea. But our scientists estimate that the total energy used in those 6 hours was equal to what our entire galactic civilization produces in a year. The room fell silent. Zenthara tried to imagine technology that could use that much power and failed completely. Prime Minister, she said finally, what are we going to do? The same thing we have been doing for 800 years, he replied. Nothing. We are going to stay away from human space, hope they continue to leave us alone, and pray that whatever they are building over there is not meant for us. But what if it is? The Prime Minister walked to his window and looked out at the city below. Millions of beings living their lives, completely unaware that somewhere in the galaxy, humans were building something beyond imagination. Then we hope they remember that some of us were never part of the hegemony that oppressed them. We hope they can tell the difference between their former enemies and innocent species that just want to live in peace. He turned back to her. Zenthara, you asked why the maps stop at human space. Now you know the real answer. The maps stop there because we are afraid to find out what lies beyond that boundary. But someday, whether we want to or not, we are going to find out. And when that day comes, we can only hope that 800 years has been enough time for humans to forgive the galaxy for what was done to them. Zenthara left the government building with her mind spinning. She had started this journey because she was curious about blank spaces on star maps. Now she understood that those blank spaces were not empty at all. They were full of the most powerful species the galaxy had ever known, and no one had any idea what they were planning to do next. That night, she stood on her apartment balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there in systems that did not appear on any map, humans were building something that required the power of stars themselves. And someday soon, the galaxy was going to find out what it was. The map stopped at human space because everyone was afraid of what lay beyond. But Zenthara had learned something that scared her even more. Humans were not content to stay beyond those boundaries forever. They were coming back. And when they did, the galaxy would discover that 800 years had been more than enough time for humanity to become something far beyond what anyone could imagine. The only question was whether they were coming back as friends or conquerors.